Good morning. We gather here in great number to pay kavod acharon, to pay our final respects to a matriarch of a family, to someone that I would call a gadol, gedolah, Mrs. Lucy Pantirer, Hindalaya Bas Arya Leib, from being more accurate, Hindalaya Bas Arya Leib, Zichrona Levracha. I'd like to acknowledge the presence of so many rabbis that are here today. Were we to honor each rabbi with a kapitel of Tehillim, we would probably go through the book of Tehillim more than once. But that's a tribute to this family about how important tradition, particularly rabbinic tradition, is. I'd like to begin with a parak of Tehillim. Shir Malos. Esaynai Elohim Yain Yovo Ezri. Ezri Meim Adonai Yosei Shemayim Baretz. Al Yitei Lamod Raglecha V'Nenu Shomerecha. Hinei Lo Yalom V'Lo Yisham Shomei Yisrael. Adonai Shomerecha. Adonai Tzilcha Yad Yaminecha. Yamam Hashemesh Lo Yakeka V'Yareach B'Layla. Adonai Yishmorecha Mikora, Yishmores Nafshecha, Adonai Yishmor Tzeitzcha Voecha, Me'ata V'Yad Olam. We're going to hear words of hesped, words of tribute from beloved family members. But we would be remiss if we did not mention the deep connection that this entire family, and in fact, this entire community, the connection that we have with the JEC, with the Teitz family. So it's an honor to ask Rabbi Teitz to please say a few words.
I accept Manav's invitation to speak, not so much because of the organization I represent, but because of the fact that I have been associated and affiliated with the Pantirer family for 65 years. An army requires officers, generals. They are the ones who set the plan, set the goals, decide on the tactics, but it also needs its soldiers. And without the soldiers, the best laid plans of the generals have no fulfillment. And all too often, the soldiers resent their role. This is Pantirer. In the Levaya Bas Hashalom was a soldier of the first magnitude. She decided to leave the generalship to the more than capable hands of the unforgettable and she decided she would be the best soldier she could be. And so she was. She filled her role more than adequately. In their personal life, she led the home, took great pride in seeing the family grow, in getting, as she would call it, the revenge against those who sought to wipe us out 2 generations ago. Raising the family, the Shemo Seferis, who are sitting here, as you can see, Kanabara, they filled up rows upon rows. And in her public life as well. She did her share, but she did it as a soldier. She was happy to take a secondary role, do whatever was called for, and to do it more than that. Personally, she was always impeccable in her appearance, but more important, impeccable in her character. And she set a high standard for the family to fulfill. I'm sure that there are many who are going to speak and who knew her even more personally than I did, certainly when it comes to the family members. So I'll be brief. May she be a Melitze Yosher, a good better, as we say in Yiddish, for her family, and may no more sorrows until the fulfillment of your Amos and Netzach. In Bocha Hashem, that the Almighty wipe away the tears from all our faces. Amen.
Again, as the Rav mentioned, if you look at just this part of the room, Kanana Hara, the real legacy, your mom, your dad, the real legacy is sitting here right in front of you. Ateres Zakenim ben Nevanim, the greatest legacy that we can have is building large Jewish families, taking our revenge on those who seek to destroy us. So at this time, we'd like to hear from various members of the family to pay tribute. First, I'd like to call Larry Pantirer, Lucy's son.
As the rabbis noted, my mother's name was Hindalaya Lauber. She was the daughter of Etka and Aryeh Lee Lauber. Our grandmother Etka lived with us all her life, and so for my sisters, Betty, Alicia, and I, we are fortunate to have two mothers to love and guide us. We never knew our grandfather Aryeh. He was a victim of the Shoah. Our mom lived her life in dignity and grace. She had exquisite taste and appreciated all things beautiful. She loved art, design, and fashion, but not just the beauty of the material world. She taught us the beauty of our family in her respect and love for her mother, the beauty of our religion, of our culture, and the state of Israel. Our mom was born on February 6, 1928, and lived in the village of Rodbydok in Galicia, southern Poland. She was blessed with a baby sister, Jane, and an extended family of aunts and uncles and cousins. She lived an ordinary young life, attending school and learning the essence of Yiddishkeit. In 1939, the unthinkable happened. The Nazis invaded, and her ordinary life and family were uprooted, never to be the same. They were fortunate to be able to flee the horrors of the Holocaust, along with much of her family, through the Russian border, moving from Colonia to Siberia, to Tashkent, Uzbekistan, and eventually settling in Kazakhstan from 1941 to 1945. The family and relatives clung tightly together and helped keep a young girl's faith in humanity alive. It was a precarious existence that she rarely spoke about, but she did relate her dread of the earthquakes that plagued the region and how hungry they often were that grass would sometimes serve as a meal. When the war ended, the families were relocated to a displaced persons camp in Linz, Austria. There she met the love of her life, our dad Murray, of blessed memory. They emigrated to the United States in 1949 and began life anew, building a family and building a life together for 61 years. She raised three pretty good kids, but with their spouses, Nancy, Howie, and Alan, raised 9 outstanding grandchildren and 23 3/4 really, really outstanding great-grandchildren. I have to admit, as a boy, and even as a man growing up, I'm not sure I really understood our mom. She was quiet, unassuming, and was perfectly comfortable living the life of the woman behind the man. She never spoke of her achievements, but there were many. She was fluent in numerous languages: Hebrew, Yiddish, English, Polish, Russian, and could converse in Czech and Hungarian, and in fact in all of the Eastern European languages. She was a great mother who understood her children. Betty had a rebellious soul, and Mom knew to give her rein with a watchful eye. Alicia had a shopping streak, and that certainly warmed our mother's sense of style. And I was a worrier, a fearful child. Growing up, and while looking back, I thought she was always being overprotective of me. She sensed that fear and worry and would comfort me every night by singing the song Que Sera, Sera. Yes, I grew out of those fears and the song, but Doris Day always makes me smile. She loved classical music and pushed me admittedly against my will to learn the piano. All education was to be the central part of our upbringing, although I basically homeschooled Alicia. But most of all, our mom was a fighter up until the moment of her passing. She would not go gently into the night. She taught us determination tinged with patience. If something was wrong, if something was worth fighting for, patience and persistence would more often than not achieve our goals. She grew up as a young woman fighting for her life and for everything she achieved. And she showed all of us that the precious breath of life to the very end is God's gift to us all. It was Mary and Jackie, Yvette and Hope, God's angels, who cared for her and taught us all what love and compassion for another human being really meant. Our mom and dad were inseparable. Our dad's yahrzeit begins tomorrow night, fittingly now for both our parents, wedged between the story of Noah and Abraham. This past Shabbos, our family all gathered together to commemorate our dad, Zadie Munich's passing, when we spoke of those two parshas. As the Torah says, Noah was a righteous man in his time, but he was not the first Hebrew. Both Abraham and Noah each faced a similar challenge, but they reacted in radically different ways. When God informed Abraham that he was going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham immediately challenges the decision and even tries to negotiate with God to save the cities. When Noah is confronted with the prospect of a flood destroying all of humanity, he is quite satisfied to accept that decision and build an ark to save himself and his family. It was Abraham who was to be the first Hebrew because of his sense of justice, compassion, and righteousness. When our mother, when our father, when the survivors of the Holocaust came to America, they did not choose to be a Noah. Our mom did not only choose to rebuild her life and her family, but along with all the survivors, rebuild the community, help build the state of Israel, and most of all, rebuild our faith in God. Mom, you've taught your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren well, and that is your greatest achievement. We'll love you forever.
Next, we'll hear from Alicia Pantirer Pines, daughter of Lucy Pantirer, her sons, Rabbi Justin and Elliot Pines, who will be reading her words on her behalf.
My mom was my best friend. I never bought a pair of shoes, a dress, or a piece of furniture, or anything without my mom until she became ill. And if my mother didn't like it, I didn't like it. I also never wore jeans in front of her, or flats, or no makeup. She wanted her kids to look nice, and her house was always spotless and organized. I guess the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. My mom was a woman of fine taste, and appearance was very important to her. She taught me you should always look your best. She had a sweet tooth for chocolate and coffee ice cream. When my father used to take Larry and Betty skiing, she would point to me and say, maybe she should stay home. It's too dangerous. And then we went shopping while they went skiing. I guess that's why Larry and Betty became great skiers and I became a great shopper. She loved going to Carpaccio and Bell Harbor. When I used to visit my parents in Florida, as soon as I landed, she would say, let's get dressed and go to the mall. Munya gave me the American Express. 3 days before my father passed away, Nikki and I came to vote with my mother. I was wearing a Lululemon outfit. My mother said, you never know who you're going to run into. You have to go home and change. Even though I was about to go play tennis right after. Over the past week, Alan and I had 3 weddings for the grandchildren of Greena's survivors. I told my mom about each wedding and what I would be wearing, and about how beautiful each wedding was. In my heart, I feel like she wanted me to make it to each of those weddings before I became an uncle. This may sound shallow or superficial, but it wasn't. More beautiful than her clothes and her home was her inside. She was warm and good-natured. She did not have a bad bone in her body and never, ever had anything bad to say about anything or anyone. Instead, it was always something nice, complimentary, or encouraging. She loved her family and her friends. She was an amazing daughter to Baba Ethel. She lived with her mom her entire life, just as her mother lived with her parents until the Holocaust. Through her relationship with her mom, she showed me how to have a relationship with my mom. She was a devoted wife, and she and my father deeply loved each other. In 1971, me and my father and Joe and Mark Wilf went to a Rangers playoff game against the Chicago Blackhawks. The game went into triple overtime, much longer than expected. And in between each period, my father would run to the payphone to call my mom to tell her he would be late. Lushu, it's overtime. He worried about her, and she worried about him. They had such a sweet and loving relationship.
She always did sweet things for others, and she would do anything she could to help us and our kids. She wrote me a letter every day in camp. It always said, please don't go in the lake. I don't want you to drown. When we were building our home in Livingston, and I would come visit the construction site, every day my mother would bring me a cup of coffee and a cheese Danish from Don's because she didn't want me to be hungry. When Justin was young, she would always pick up the newest wrestler for him on the way to visit us. And then for Elliot, it was the newest Power Ranger. Later, she would come with us to pick out new suits for the holidays at Sam's. When Zadie Eli, Alan's father, passed away, I was newly pregnant with Elliot. And we hadn't told my parents yet. My mother sensed it though. Sitting next to me in the back seat of the car at the funeral, she opened her black Chanel pocketbook and took out and gave me the biggest Kit Kat bar I had ever seen. It was the size of her pocketbook. She loved hosting a beautiful Seder, and her love of fine things never made her lose sight of what was important. When David hid the afikomen under an elegant rug in her den in Hillside, and we were left with a pile of crumbs and a mess, she only loved him. And when Justin was so excited about singing Who Knows One that he shattered a fine wine glass, she only loved him as well. I was so thankful that my parents moved to Livingston when they did. and I was able to visit them much more often. And we were able to spend holidays together with the whole family. She was blessed with real lifelong friends. One of the highlights of her week was going to the beauty salon and then for lunch with her sister Jane and Millie Zuckerman. And if not the salon, then playing canasta with them. She loved taking turns hosting Rosh Hashanah Kiddush with Aunt Sally and Uncle Isaac. Her and my father loved going on trips to beautiful places with Susie and Joe Wolf. And they loved living in the Bell Harbor 101 with Henya. With Henya and Avram Kochik, and spending time with them and my mother-in-law, Bobby Hilda there. From when she became ill until she passed, so many people always genuinely asked about her well-being, from close friends to the salespeople at Neiman Marcus. She genuinely cared about them and they cared about her. And in the last 10 years, my mother was blessed to have people around her who treated her the way she treated others. I know all of her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren love visiting her, spending time at her house, and celebrating special holidays and occasions with her. Mary, Jackie, Yvette, and Hope, you were there for her and brightened her life, each and every day. Thank you, Dr. Paley and Dr. Frank, for guiding my mother through these difficult years. Finally, I want to especially thank my sister Betty for taking the lead with Mom's care, being in constant contact with her medical team and overseeing all of her medicine. Mom, thank you for being a role model for me, Alan, Larry, Nancy, Betty, and Howard, and all of our children and grandchildren. We love you and we miss you.
Next, we'll hear from Lucy's granddaughter, Julie Schwartz, Capella.
I just want to start by saying, Mom, and Alicia, and Uncle Larry, I am so very sorry. You have been incredibly devoted to Baba for so many years and took such good care of her. On behalf of all of us, thank you. Mom, you always told us that your mother was the most devoted and loving mother imaginable. And she was the role model for our entire family in how to care for her family, a true Yiddish mom. And of course, thank you also to Baba's wonderful caregivers, Mary, Yvette, Jackie, and Hope. Your warmth and kindness was always so comforting to the whole family. I said goodbye to my grandmother, Baba Lucy, a long time ago. Sadly, she hasn't been the same woman I grew up with for quite some time. But my memories of the elegant, generous, and most loving woman I ever knew are rich and deep. I am reminded of her and my Zadie Murray, Zichrono Livracha, constantly. Just a few weeks ago, my daughter Hallie took the SAT. As Reuben and I helped her prepare that morning with a good breakfast, setting the alarm on her watch, and the other minutiae of the moment, a very clear memory rushed over me. When I took the SAT almost 30 years ago, it was offered on a Sunday at the JEC, which was very close to my grandparents' house in Hillside. I remember Baba distinctly insisting to my mom that my friends and I had to sleep at her house the night before so she could prepare a proper dinner and breakfast for us before we took the test. We showed up. The table was set as if it was Shabbos, with all of my favorite food, of course, and the beds were perfectly made. Baba told us she was so happy to have us, and that in fact, we should just skip the test altogether. because it seemed to be causing us way too much stress anyway. This was one of the many, many nights that I slept at my grandparents' home growing up. Even if Baba and Zaidi had big plans with friends, if I expressed any interest in staying over, they would stop everything to have me. I loved when they picked me up from my house in Livingston, 10-10 winds or some kind of Yiddish station playing in the car, and a riot of nonstop questions about how everything in my life was going. An amazing meal was always waiting for me, and chocolate or coffee ice cream, Baba and Zaidi's favorites, in the freezer for a late night snack. The next day was always a trip to the mall. Baba would get beautifully dressed up, hairs and nails perfectly done, and pink lipstick applied. We always started with lunch. Baba and I ordered half of a tuna fish sandwich and half an order of frozen yogurt, the Bloomingdale special. I'm not even sure why Baba ever asked for the menus, considering we always ordered the same thing. The next part was my favorite. We would canvass the mall for hours. Saks, Neiman's, and all her other favorites. Baba would tell me I was the most beautiful girl in the world, and that everything looked good on me. I didn't grow up to love shopping quite as much as she did, but I will always cherish those days at the mall together. Even when I was feeling my worst as a pimply, chubby teenager, Baba always made me feel my best. I also loved traveling with my grandparents to Israel, visiting them at their apartment in Miami, and spending countless meals, car trips, holidays at the Concord, and much more with their survivor community of friends and family, the Greeners as we call them. I especially love listening to their stories over card games. I learned so much from being with them, and their courage, strength, and love of life was so inspiring to me, even as a young child. And I truly loved watching my grandparents' beautiful marriage of over 60 years. They came to this country with nothing and built something remarkable together, hand in hand. My Zaidi Murray was often in the spotlight, but Baba quietly supported him in everything he did, took care of him, and was often the one pushing him in one direction or another. Zaidi adored her and treated her like a queen. Baba hated attention. She rarely spoke about her time in the Shoah, and like many survivors, was extremely overprotective and nervous. She was the matriarch of our family and the true Ashes Chayil, so nobody wanted to upset her, but sometimes her requests were unreasonable. Julishi, why do you have to go to college so far away? Julishi, why do you need to go to Israel for an entire semester? Daniele, why do you need to play so much tennis? She worried about everything, but when push came to shove, even when she didn't totally agree with our decisions, she ultimately supported us and made it work. She quickly figured out who my most responsible friends at college were, and quickly added them to her speed dial so she could make sure they would call her when my flight landed. When I went to Israel for the semester, so did she and Zaidi. And she even started to like tennis and loved watching Danielle play in the Junior US Open. She was always our biggest fan. She was not shy about voicing her opinions, but her love was always unconditional and plentiful. Baba and Zaidi never ever missed a single milestone of any of their grandchildren, and they instilled in us a deep love and appreciation for family and Yiddishkeit. And when my siblings, cousins, and I started to get married and have children of our own, Baba could not be more proud. I distinctly remember looking out at the crowd at my wedding with Reuben and thinking, this is true revenge. My grandparents with all of their survivor friends, dancing and celebrating the marriage of their eldest grandchild. Of course, it helped that I was marrying a lawyer who went to Harvard. They really loved Reuben. Baba was beaming that night, and she continued to beam at all of our family simchas until she started to get sick. And I truly think she finally let go yesterday, knowing that we were all together for Zadie's yahrzeit this past Shabbos. Baba, we promise to keep loving, supporting, and protecting each other like you always did for us. We will always remember your kindness, generosity, and the way you made us feel when we were together. You and Zadie taught us that family is everything, and we will pass this on to our children, and please God, our grandchildren and great-grandchildren one day. We love you and will miss you dearly.
Lucy's grandson, Jonathan Schwartz.
If it was up to my Baba Lucy, she would have lived in a bubble with her entire family. And I don't mean a symbolic bubble. I mean a literal bubble. I'm not joking. If she could have put each and every one of her family members in actual bubble wrap inside of a big Pantirer family bubble where she could watch them 24/7, that would have made her the happiest person in the universe. She lived for her family. She worried for her family. We were her entire world. She wanted to know everything and wanted to know where everyone was at all times. And take my word for it, if she didn't already know, she would find out. We don't know exactly what her means and methods were, but let's just say James Bond had nothing on her. Another Bond-like talent of Baba's was her expertise at interrogation. I guess I should use this time to come clean with my family. I may have had a loose tongue when it came to Baba Lucy. At some point, she must have realized that I was too nice or maybe too naive to lie to her. So I guess it became her go-to snitch. Why is Julie going to Israel again? Is there a boy there? What is a wake forest? What is a nice Jewish girl doing in North Carolina? Who is David dating? Is David dating? What are we building these days? Why are we building in Florida? Why is Nikki not engaged yet? Etc., etc. And I'm not gonna lie, I told Baba everything she asked. I just couldn't withhold information from this woman. She had a spell over me. I always thought it was because I was her favorite. I didn't realize until years later that I was her favorite. It wasn't that I was her favorite, it was because I spilled the beans. Consistent with the theme of Baba being a high-level spy was Baba's innate ability to find us no matter where we were in the world. I was on a teen tour in Israel after my freshman year of high school. I knew going into that my grandmother was going to be especially nervous about the trip, as she was the same way with Julie 2 years prior. I knew enough to know that I should call her every week to make sure she knew I was okay. Keep in mind that this was before cell phones, so I was calling from a payphone with a calling card. At some point during my trip, we ventured into the desert for a week-long camping trip. Obviously, we had no ability to communicate with our parents. After being in the desert for a few days, our army guard, it was common to travel with armed security in Israel at that time, starts roaming around the campground asking for Jonathan Schwartz. I said, yes, I'm Jonathan Schwartz, as he handed me his army-issued satellite phone. In his thick Israeli accent, he said, it's your grandmother. Not sure how she got this phone number, but be quick. Let's just say that she never divulged who her Mossad contact was. I'll never forget when my grandfather said to me, Jonathan, you need to buy a house in Livingston and stop with that long drive from the city. He said, you can't waste your time in the car. You need to be close to the office and on the job sites. Within a few months, Julie and I were homeowners. My grandfather passed away 3 days before we moved in. It was as if he was preparing for me to be close to my grandmother after he had passed. We had had the privilege of living around the corner from Baba for the last 14 years. The gift that Mia, Mason, and Stella had living around the corner from their great-grandmother is something I hope they treasure forever. I also had the gift of living around the corner from Jackie, Mary, Yvette, and Hope for the past 10 or 12 years. They were such extraordinary caretakers. It made every effort to keep our Baba feeling comfortable, well-fed, and most importantly for Baba, beautiful. Thank you for everything. Having survived the atrocities of the Holocaust with her sister and her mother, Baba Ethel, having met the love of her life, our Zadie Murray, Alev HaShalom, and having started a prosperous family in New Jersey, she really maintained one goal in mind at all times: to raise a Jewish family who would make it their mission never to forget what happened and to protect them at all costs. Baba Lucy, you were warm, protective like a lion, funny, a bit of a snob, beautiful, and most importantly, incredibly kind. You always treated Julie and the in-laws like they were your own. You lived to see PSP 9 become PSP 18 plus 23 and God willing and counting. You often would say to me, you are the oldest grandson. You need to take care of and watch over your siblings and cousins. You have to make sure that you always stick together. Family is the most important. Baba, I will continue to do my best to always strive for that and to always make you proud. I had the best role models in you and Zadie. I love you and will miss you every day.
My introduction to the community of survivors that you've been hearing about took place long before I ever stepped foot on the shores of Livingston. It was at Nikki and Avi's wedding a number of years ago when I was still living in Long Island, that in the middle of the celebration, there was a stop, there was a hush, and all the survivors in the room were asked to stand up, and everyone gave tribute. That was something that was so incredible for me to see. And sadly, over time, just wasn't feasible to have that practice done anymore because there's so few of them left. So we recognize also what a treasure we had in these incredible human beings, these survivors, and the ones that we have left, embrace them, learn from them, get to know them, remember them. So for our final family speech, I'd like to ask Nikki to come say a few words.
Different survivors responded to the Shoah differently. For my Baba Lucy, revenge was not anger, nor was it making sure everyone knew her story. For example, my Zadie Murray Shoah testimony was 8 hours. Baba Lucy's was just over 1 hour. No, for Baba Lucy, revenge was quiet and sweet and gracious. The way she avenged the loss was through unconditional love, kindness, generosity, and devotion. She taught us how to live a life devoted to family, to build a home faithful to the Jewish people, and to restore a commitment to human dignity. The Nazis separated her from her extended family during the Shoah, and the war cost Baba's father, Leon Norberg, his life. Baba responded with an unrivaled commitment to family. In the aftermath of the Shoah, in Binder Michal, a DP camp, my Zadie Murray won Baba Lucy over with a bar of chocolate, her favorite. Together with her true love, they rebuilt their lives with family as their prized possession. Baba's mother, Baba Ethel, lived with her and Zadie for her entire life in America. Her sister Jane and her husband Alex lived nearby, with Zadie's Aunt Sally and Uncle Isaac 2 doors down. Her children, and later her grandchildren, and even later her great-grandchildren, were the center of her life. When we were growing up, she never missed a Siddur play, cheerleading competition, recital, sports game, or graduation. If my mom told her that one of us was sick, she would meet my mom at the doctor's appointments, somehow managing to arrive before us, even though she lived further away. And then she would drop off a pot of homemade chicken soup to make us feel better. Whenever she and Zadie traveled, she would bring me back a doll because the night she was forced out of her home as a child, she had to leave her dolls behind. And Baba's devotion to her family was not one-sided. The feeling was mutual. During my freshman year of college, a friend asked me why I call my mom Baba. Confused, I explained that I call my grandmother Baba, to which she answered, "You speak to your grandmother that many times a day?" And to be clear, it wasn't that Baba was always calling me. I was often calling her as well. Baba Lucy made each of us feel very special. She had a heart of gold. For me, I loved visiting Baba and Zadie in Bell Harbor and having special memories alone with them. Bobby Hilda joined us for intense Rummikey games. What other 20-year-old spent spring break with her grandparents? In addition to the pain they inflicted on Baba's family, the Nazis took away Baba's home. Forced to leave at age 11, she left everything behind, including her childhood, and was on the move for the rest of the war and homeless after the war. Baba responded by building a Bayit Ne'eman B'Yisrael, a house which was faithful to the Jewish people. Baba not only lived with and near her extended family, but also offered a central point for the family to gather and celebrate. It was her greatest pleasure to entertain, whether for a Seder, Sweet 16, or a fundraiser. She set an example for her children and later grandchildren how to build a home dedicated to family and the Jewish community. She instilled in all of us her love of Jewish traditions, family, and performing mitzvot. She had a home filled with yummy Jewish food, including her famous sugar cookies and noodle kava. Later, when she moved to Livingston, she loved when we sang Zmirot at the Shabbos table on Friday nights. She loved Jewish and Yiddish music and listening and praying along with Rabbi Simcha Sussman when he led high holiday services here at Etz Chaim. When Baba was no longer able to come to Etz Chaim on Rosh Hashanah, she would always perk up when Rabbi Yisrael Rosenblum would walk all the way to her house to blow shofar for her every year on both days. It was so moving for our entire family. Thank you. And if the Nazis tried to take away Baba's dignity, Baba lived a life in which a commitment to dignity was expressed through treating each person with respect and dressing and decorating and hosting in a most dignified way. She was a gracious host with a beautiful home. She had an amazing love and appreciation of fashion and the finest taste. It was always a treat to go shopping with her, especially before Yom Tov. There was no one with more grace, class, and elegance. She taught us never leave the house without lip gloss or a right to benzone. She always dressed up, be it for shopping, a doctor's appointment, or a flight. The first time she met Avi, she told me, "He's a keeper, but you'll have to always wear high heels." Dr. Frank, Dr. Pally, Jackie, Mary, Yvette, and Hope, you treated Baba with so much dignity and devotion, and I know you could feel that the feeling was mutual until her last day. If the Nazis did have one small victory over Baba, it was that her deep appreciation of and love for her family made her worry a lot. A trait that Jonathan, Elliott, and I have inherited. She would worry that Florida was too windy and that Zadie and I would catch a cold on the beach. She would worry when I asked Zadie Murray too many questions about the Shoah that it would upset him and give him nightmares. In a time before apps or the internet or even cell phones, she knew every airline's phone number. When we called to say we landed from a flight, she would say, "I know." Baba would never leave home without a snack in her purse, usually Nips coffee, in case someone was hungry. Another trait I have also inherited from her. In the Northeast blackout in 2003, when no one could reach each other, I was driving home with some friends from the beach, and the only phone call that managed to get through to any of the four of us on that ride was to my phone, and it was Baba Lucy. "Baba, you don't have to worry anymore. You won. Out of the ashes of the Shoah, you have modeled for us a life of commitment to family, to building a Jewish home, and to living a life of dignity for ourselves and everyone around us. Your 6 children, Uncle Larry and Aunt Nomi, Aunt Betty and Uncle Howie, and my parents, Alicia and Alan, have become all-star children and all-star parents and grandparents. The love, respect, and admiration they showed you and Zadie is something we all strive to emulate. Running at a moment's notice when you needed them. Showing us all what it means to wholeheartedly fulfill the mitzvah of Pigud Avayim, learning from you and the example you have set. Baba, it seems only fitting that you brought us together for your Levaya during the week of Parshas Lech Lecha, when we read about Avraham, the paradigm of chesed, acts of loving kindness. You responded to the pain of the Shoah with chesed, turning darkness into light through your lifelong commitments to family, home, and dignity. We will all continue to do our best to live the life you have modeled for us. We love you and miss you deeply, and as Zadie always ended his speeches, Am Yisrael Chai, and God bless America.
Wow, such unbelievable words of tribute. There's a custom that many people have among the Jewish people to study a full folio of the Talmud every day. It's something called Daf Yomi. It takes about 7.5 years to complete. And a few weeks ago, as we were nearing the end of the tractate called Ketubot, Maseches Ksubos, there was a passage there on Daf Kuf Gimel Amud Aleph, which stuck with me, and I was reminded of a Yisker sermon that I read that was given by Rabbi Norman Lamb, Zichrono Livracha, April 14th, 1955. He wasn't even in the Jewish Center yet. He was a rabbi in New England. And I would like to adapt his brilliant words, thinking of why we're all here today. What happens when the senior member of a multi-generational family leaves us? What should our response be? How should we carry on? So the Gemara says as follows: Tana Rabbana, B'shas P'tiraso Shel Rebbe. When the great Rebbe, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi, knew that his time in this world was coming to an end, Omar Levanai Ani Tzarech, he gathered his children. He said, I need my children. Nichnesu Banav Etzlo. The children came in next to him on his deathbed, and Amr Lahem, and he said the following 4 things. These are the 4 pieces of advice that he gave to his children. Hizaru b'chvod imechem. Please be mindful, be very careful, extremely watchful over the honor of your mother. Ner yehei daluk b'mekomo. Leave a light, a candle burning in its place like I've always had. Shulchan yehei aruch b'mekomo. The table should be set, as always, in its place. Mitat ha'imitzas b'mekomo. The bed shall always be made in its place as it was. If we look at these 4 items specifically, not necessarily in order, I think there's much that we can learn. First, tizar b'kavod imchem. Honor your parents, honor your mother. It's the Yiddish mama who dictates, though sometimes silently and in the background, but dictates the Jewish flavor of the home. She is the Akeres Habayis. She is the mainstay of the Jewish home. I have always been in awe at how Baba Lucy's children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren show her so much cover, so much honor, so much dignity. And I know it's been said many times, but we cannot thank enough to Jackie, Mary, Yvette, and Hope. And the loss for the family today is equal. I know it's your loss as well. Because I have never seen people who are so devoted to care, and as I mentioned, dignity. And every time I saw Baba Lucy, she looked stunning, beautiful, even though she couldn't even speak. And I know that this honor that you gave to your mother, mother-in-law, your grandmother, great-grandmother, friend, confidant, that's honor that will last far past our earthly existence. Rabbi Yehuda Natziel said that the bed should be made. First of all, the bed is always made. But the bed is a representation of family. The best way to maintain someone's legacy, the legend of their life, is to maintain this incredible family. I've gotten to know over the years, PSP 9 plus 9, now Kanana Hara at 23 and counting, Ken Yerbu. I've watched you grow and thrive for many, many years now. And you included Baba Lucy in every single event, even when she could not respond the way you may have liked her to. I mentioned this last night in shul, but a few years ago at Mia's bat mitzvah, so I voluntold Jonathan that he was going to do a haftorah. Now, Jonathan, when he wasn't squealing on everyone, not exactly the biggest, let's be honest, not exactly the biggest musical talent that we have. And this is like well outside of his comfort zone. And yet, Jonathan, for months and months and months, and I must have hit him several times in the process, but he learned and mastered that haftorah. And before that Shabbos, he and I, we went to Baba Lucy and he sang that haftorah before. And I know that she heard every single word, and it meant so much to her. Just a few weeks ago, right before Rosh Hashanah, Rabbi Justin stopped by with some of the girls. I said, "What are you doing? You're all in soccer outfits." Not mate, well, we used to have a stop and say hello to Baba Lucy. Because that was so important. And yesterday, where we had the privilege to say the appropriate tefillos with her and her waning moments. And Elliot came in with Madeline. And they said to me, that was the first time that they met. Can you imagine that legacy that she's going to have? You're going to tell your daughter, your beautiful daughter, Kanana Hara, that you got to meet your great-grandmother, a heroine, an all-star, only a few minutes before she left this world, the first and only time. And when walking into her room, of course, dutifully hanging on the wall, news clippings, news reports of Danielle's success, most recently in Israel with her gold medals. And the house is full of pictures. And yeah, there's pictures with presidents and famous people, but it's the pictures of the family. That's what's most important. That's what's most valuable. And as we mentioned, she will share a yahrzeit week with her beloved husband, Murray, Moshe Mechul. You have to say it properly. Moshe Mechul. As if to say, you know what? We'll keep this family together in the same week. And her last day of Shiva being observed is November 7th, the day that Zadie Murray passed away on the English calendar 14 years ago. As if to say, no matter what, we're finding ways to keep this remarkable family together. I know that she's leaving this world, having left not just family, but the right kind of family. Family that is dedicated, family that is thoughtful, family that is kind, family that embraces tradition. That's true project. Rabbi Yehuda said also we have to have a shulchan aruch. We have to have a table set. And we'd walk into our home, you would never see anything on the table. But of course, a table which in Jewish tradition is akin to a mizbeach. It's an altar, it's a holy, sacred place. A table where Shabbos meals, Yontif meals, Pesach, Sedarim, all the holy Jewish rituals are observed. But it's also a table of chesed. It's the table where those who have not receive. It's a table where for many during the week becomes the home office, where the giant checkbook comes out so we can write charitable donations to the various tzedakahs and the various needy people that rely on us. When we talk about following Jewish law, we talk about following the Shulchan Aruch. It's the set table, because the set table represents the path that we follow in life. You all have an extremely impressive example of what a Shulchan Aruch is. The Pantirer table that has family surrounding, the table that takes care of others, the table that builds communities, that builds Judaism, that builds the state of Israel, the table that remembers and never forgets, the table that fights injustice, the table that fights anti-Semitism. She left it set for all of you. And you have to carry on sitting around that set table. But finally, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said you have to have a ner daluk. You have to have a candle that is lit. We light candles, we light Shabbos candles, we light yahrzeit candles. You see on the wall you'll see it's actually, the Zaidi Murray's light is on. This is yahrzeit is going to be observed Wednesday night and Thursday. A ner daluk, she had a fire that burned within her. Passion, a fire that enabled her to have the determination to survive, but not only to survive, but to thrive, and to build a family, and to build a community, and to build a home, and to be a positive, loving person. Those who are left behind have to make sure that they maintain that spark, that flame, that passion. She and Zaidi Murray, they sacrificed so much so that we could have so much. And our challenge is complacency. Our challenge is that we have it too good. You have to make sure that you maintain that passion. Keep her candle burning bright within each and every one of you. Her flame raged on for years and allowed her to enjoy so much nachas, so much blessing. And even when you thought she couldn't, I know that she absolutely did. But the Gemara ends not there. The Gemara adds one more line. And the Gemara says, Kol be'shimshei have asla beis. The Gemara says that after Rabbi Yehuda died, every single Friday night, in some manifestation or spirit, Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi would visit his family to check on them and to see if they were holding true to his values. I know that Baba Lucy will always be at your Shabbos tables every single week. She will be at your Yom Tov tables every single Yom Tov. She will be at every sitter play. She'll be at every graduation. She'll be at every game. She'll be at every match. I'm confident that given the way that you were raised, that you will keep her fire burning bright. I'm confident that this multi-generational family will follow in her footsteps. I know Larry and Nancy, Betty and Howie, Alicia and Alan, how much of an example you set for your children and grandchildren, what it means to honor parents. And to this incredible legacy of Julie and Ruben, Hallie, Romy, and Murray, Jonathan, Julie, Mia, Mason, and Stella, David and Courtney, Justin, Tali, Olivia, Caroline, Aria, and Murray, Danielle, John, Robbie, Allison, and Claire, Mark, Shayna, Vivian, Maya, and Murray, Nicole, Avi, Emma, Alexandra, Murray, and Leo, Elliot, Mishi, Sylvia, Madeline, Elizabeth, Owen, and Benjamin, counting. I know that you know what it means to carry on her flame, to be at her set table, to keep the sanctity and the close bond of this family, and to give her life such unbelievable meaning, which you have done so already, that you will continue to do so for many, many years. As was mentioned, Baba Lucy was a big fan of song, particularly Yiddish songs. And at this time, I'd like to ask my dear friend, my colleague, Rabbi Mendy Solomon from Chabad of Short Hills, of course, whose building bears the family name, to share with us a couple of her beloved recitations.
Thank you, Rabbi. To Larry, Betty, Alicia, their spouses, and your beautiful families. Yesterday, we walked down Lucy's driveway, escorting her out of her home for the last time. Then we sang the words, Anima Amen, I believe. Lucy, I believe that all your family are loved by so many because of you, you being the matriarch of this most magnificent shpacha. I believe that the Dora of the generations, as we heard so many, thank God, and it was said 23 plus, the original 23 and me, Lucy, will be following the path of your chesed and your kindness. And I believe, to the great grandchildren who I spoke to before, it's such an honor of having a great grandmother who even, and especially at your young age, were able to know and to visit and to interact with. And as hard as it is today, it is a great joy. I want you to know that yesterday we walked into the room and I knelt down by the bedside and I whispered into Lucy's ear two things. I said, thank you. Thank you for giving us these three beautiful children, and specifically for my friend Matt. Who would have thought, I said to her with a chuckle, that somebody just 5 years in her senior, almost, would be texting me and I become my best friend. Torah, jokes, memes, soccer scores. Who would have thought that you would give me somebody so cherished and so special? And I thanked you for the special family whom, as the rabbi just mentioned, we have the great honor and distinction of carrying your name proudly on our shul building, where we have already been blessed to have had many family simchot, and please God, many more. And so I thank you for that. Little did you think when you picked up that coffee from Don's many years ago that this would be a shul hosting your name. But the honor is ours. And for that, a few years ago, when Lucy was taken to hospital, and I had the good fortune, as I do, to be able to sing, especially to the survivors, much more than a survivor, thriving, some Yiddish songs. I sang to her the song, A Yiddish Mama. I'll literally translate it and sing it. We'll conclude. The song begins, "If will ba'echa kasha pregna," I wish to ask you a question. Tell me who can. Which great virtue does God bless all of us? You can't buy this for no money at all. But when it is lost, sadly, the tears flow. It's a special treasure. And when Mom is not here anymore, and she's in Olam Haba, in the world to come, we will remember, we will celebrate you. Happened to be a horse. Thank God I was at a wedding 2 nights ago, sitting next to Alan and Alicia, and sing a dance to 2 in the morning. And this is the commitment that will continue, Lucy, to be able to celebrate many more. Ich will bei euch Akashe fragen, sag mir, wer es kennt, welche Taie verlegen, Mensch Gott allein. Man kauft das nicht, für keine Geld, das gibt mir nur süß. Oi, wenn man verliert uns, die Tränen, wenn man vergisst. Ein Zweiten gibt mir keine nicht, es hat nicht keine Gebein. Oi, wer das hat verloren, das will schon, wer ich mein. Jüdische Mama, es gibt nicht besser auf dem Welt. A jüdische Mama, Oi, wie bitter, wenn sie fällt. Oi, wie schön und wie lichtig in Häusern ist du. Oi, wie finster und treurig, als der Mann nicht du. Oi, wie treurig und finster, wenn Gott nimmt es von uns. Oi, Mamele, jüdische Mama. Oi, Mamele, oh. Please join me as we sing together an Imam. Imam, Imam, Imam. Be'emunah sheleimo, oye be'vias HaMoshiach, be'vias HaMoshiach, ani ma'amin, oye be'vias HaMoshiach, be'vias HaMoshiach, ani ma'amin.
Okay, please rise. Elmalei Rachamim Shochei V'Amiromim Hamitzei Menuchon Achona Kanfei HaShechina B'Ma'alos Kiddushim Tehorim Kizohar Orakia Mashirim Es Nishmas Kindalaya Basar Yeleib Shel Chali Olama Bavor Sharach Mispalalim Beras Koras Nishmasa Begahan Eden Tehei Menuchasa Lochem Balarachamim Yasim B'Seising Rachamim Bitzror HaChaim Es Nishmasa Adonai Hunach Halasa B'Sanuach B'Shalom Al Mishkava V'Nomar Amen. God, full of compassion, who dwells on high, for in proper rest on the sheltering wings of your presence, in the lofty levels of the holy and pure who shine like the brightness of the firmament, the soul of Levaya Bas Aryeh Leib, Lucy Pantirer, who has gone to her world and for whose memory we pray. May her repose be in paradise. May the Master of Compassion bring her under the cover of God's wings and bind her soul in the bond of life. May the Lord be your heritage, and may she repose on her resting place in peace. Let us all respond together. Amen.
At this point, we indulge your patience so we can get the family out of the sanctuary together. We'll be going to the JEC Cemetery in Newark. Family will be following us to the cemetery. Thank you.